Hello and welcome back to another episode of Molby on the Spot. Your chance to hear the wit and wisdom of my friend, Mr. Jan Molby, the Liverpool legend, who joins us every week here on Anfield Index Pro. Good evening, Jan.
Good evening, Trevor. Once again, I hope you're well.
I am, man. I am, yeah. Lots for us to talk about. I'm kind of tempted to just do a whole chat about Manchester United, uh, Arsenal, City. Just looking at other teams is fascinating at the moment because, and I know you'll be able to relate to this, it's a lovely feeling to not have that tightness on your shoulder, to be 5 points clear off your nearest title rivals, and to be able to sort of relax into the weekend watching other teams, see how they get on, it not really mattering. It's going really well for us in that regard. Let's just take a little bit of a few minutes at the start, if it's okay with you, just to talk maybe about that City game, that City Arsenal game. What did you make of them in terms of each team, how they approached it, and so on?
Well, obviously, there's been a lot of criticism of Mikel Arteta again and the starting 11 that he picked. But I actually think that the biggest surprise for me was the way the City played. I understand that you go to the Emirates and you get yourself a goal within the first 10 minutes, but it was never the way that Pep Guardiola played the game. Wanted to defend and time waste and not play out from the back. So that was a big surprise. The fact that Arsenal struggled for as long as they did with the starting 11 that he chose wasn't a great surprise either. I think we've seen that on a couple of occasions this season. Having said all of that, I still think that Liverpool and Arsenal will finish first and second. Of that, there's no doubt in my mind. We did this about 3 weeks ago, didn't we, Trevor? For no money can I have Manchester City. I just can't. I just can't have them. And I think, even if you're looking again at the game yesterday, and as much criticism there is of Arsenal, when I look at City and I'm looking and go on, and where are your, Donnarumma come in, he looks at tidy goalkeeper, and I think the two centre halves, the fact that Guardiola now plays centre half, I think is a massive bonus, and Ruben Diaz. Rodri, yeah, he's slowly becoming or getting back to form. And then I look at Haaland. Apart from that, I just don't see it. People are trying to talk about Jeremy Doku at the start he's at. I don't see it. Reinders that they bought from Milan, the Dutch guy, had a great debut. Yet again, I just don't see him being a lot more than just a little above average, So I can't have City. So I think it'll be Liverpool and Arsenal. Where that ends up, I think has a lot to do with we ain't going to win every game. We know that, so we're winning the game with too long. So we know things will happen. Injuries will come along. I think it's all a matter of how brave. I think Roy Keane, I didn't see the coverage because I was at the game, but I read something today about Roy Keane talking about managers who gamble. And he mentioned Brian Clough and Sir Alex Ferguson. They gamble to win games. Mikel Arteta doesn't. Some people will say that the starting 11 he chose was the starting 11 he felt would give him the best chance of winning, isn't it? But I just sometimes think that a game is 90 minutes. Why waste 30 or 45 minutes of that game trying to win the game by being almost safe in it? So, at the moment, it's too early to say it's Liverpool's to lose because things will happen over the season. But at the moment, we don't have a title contender with us that is on fire, and that's a big thing, and that's a big help. That's what you spoke about before. That kind of pressure is not there, is it? Already we brought ourselves a defeat. We can lose a game and still be clear, isn't it? So that's a massive thing as a player. Trevor, you look and you think, because you understand as a player that every game you expect to win the majority of your games, but things can go wrong. So before every game, you kind of go, well, even if we should lose this today, and the thing is that it does not enter into the Liverpool players' mind that they will lose two in a bounce. So it's kind of, we can lose one today, but then it'll be a while before we lose again. So it's going well in a funny sort of way, Trevor.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really well put, actually. And I do want to just poke a little bit more at both of those teams, but you brought up Roy Keane, and I meant to say this to you last week, and I'm going to bring it up now because it's something that, because you don't involve yourself in the social media world, you're sort of mercifully free of an awful lot of these conversations that that go on, and they're often sparked by ex-pros like yourself who are now in the game of punditry. And I do think there's a difference between, some pundits and lads who can actually analyse the game. And I think that's fine. There's probably room for everything. There's room for fellas who just bring a bit of personality, or Michael Richard types. There's room for that. It's TV, right? So, I wouldn't be into giving anyone a hard time, but I just find this really interesting. Keane was responding to not the last outing, as in, whatever it was, the weekend's outing, the previous outing for United, which was a very disappointing one. And he was very sort of animated, talking about just put in a tackle. You should be coming off the field exhausted. Where's the passion? Basically, was the gist of what he was saying. Where's the evidence that these guys care? And I saw that commentary and that way of approaching it dismissed as sort of 90s football punditry or something like that. And look, I get the idea that it's not very sophisticated, but I kind of think it really has a place. And I think it would be terrible if we lost that. Should we let lads off the hook now just because we want to talk about systems? Isn't that an essential part of the game? It seemed a bit to me very reductive to just dismiss it as old-fashioned. What did you think? What do you think about that?
Well, I still think effort, and obviously I'm from the same and a little bit before Roy Keane, but I still think effort is about 80% of the game. We kind of wrap it up in all sorts of these things, and you get new analysts and younger pundits who talk about something totally different. But I just think that in the end, Trevor, how often in modern day football do you see a team that loses by one goal and they come off the pitch and you look and you go, do you know what? They gave it everything. How often, and they gave it everything is not just to do with sheer effort, you know what I mean? But it's like they tried everything also to get themselves an equaliser or whatever. I sometimes miss that a little bit. We're always waiting for this perfect. I mean, the game more than ever, and I'm talking about at football clubs, at the grounds, at the training ground, it's played on screens, isn't it? It's played up on the board. You're being told and shown whatever, but that's not where the game played, is it? So once you get out there where the game is actually played, so many things can go wrong. More things go wrong than right. I find that amazing that football is played with your feet, Trevor, which makes it a very difficult game to play. With your hands, you've got much more control, haven't you? But playing with your feet, it's a lot of things go wrong. So a lot more things in a football match goes wrong than right, generally. And I don't know why people don't accept that. It's part of the game. There doesn't have to be a reason for everything that happens in football. And that's something that really winds me up, that there will always be somebody. It doesn't matter what happens in the game, they'll come and go, this is why this happened. And I go, no, it's not. It happened because it happened. And there's plenty of those moments in the game, innit? Now, Van Dijk's winner against Atletico Madrid, what? It's nothing to do other than determination, is it? He's gone in that box and he's gone, get it anywhere near me, yeah? And I'm telling you, I'm not going to jump, I'm going to plant myself, I'm going to head it, you know what I mean? It's like things like that. I always talk about that game against Charlton years ago where Alan Hansen, when we were getting beat 2-1 with 5 minutes ago, and then we equalised and he went, I better go up front, you know what I mean, for the corner. And you think, well, what you don't hit the ball, you know what I mean? But it was kind of, and then we scored the winner. It's those kind of moments. They're the moments, not the moments of the tactical boards or off the training ground. There's other moments that, Rio coming on at Newcastle. Yeah, of course, it's great. It's a great substitution, but the fact that he scores the goal is not something that they planned on the training ground, is it? It's circumstances during the game that happens, and we're there, isn't it? And yeah, like I said before, shit happens to everybody,
It does, and I love that you brought it to that sort of just sheer force of will that is such an important part of the game, and absolutely what part of what Keane was poking at. But I think where people were found it easy to critique him was when he was talking about tackling and all sorts. Now, people may have the wrong idea about football in the not so distant past when you were bestriding the pitches. And I think it was a hugely different game. Obviously, you're the man to talk to about just how different. Um, but tackling had a huge part in the game, and in a derby game, there was a little bit of, even someone who was a cultured footballer like yourself wouldn't have been averse to seeing at least a teammate maybe go in tough early on and sort of allow people to know, right, this is my area and I'm the boss here. It's an old-fashioned way of doing things. I wonder, do you think, and this is a roundabout way of getting to it, do you think that era of physicality has almost all but disappeared? I know there's no Graham Souness is going around stamping lads in the thigh just randomly, but do you think it's all but disappeared? In that, is Keane actually sort of talking in a vacuum there because you can't actually do that type of thing anymore? Or what's your take on that in terms of the physicality in the game now?
So I do think that with the way that the game is being ref these days, that they are trying to allow a little bit more. They do let one or two things. Where for years, Trevor, we got fed up with footballers buying a free kick, didn't we? You get yourself in front of the opposition, you feel a touch and you go to ground. But a lot of these things now, the referees are no longer being fooled. They're waiting, play on, let's get on with the game, isn't it? The only thing I will say is, I don't have an issue with how we played or how the game played today. I have massive respect for both. But that bit where we basically had no tactics in the first 15, 20 minutes because it was about win the right to play, and that's how every game was 15, 20 minutes. Now, that's where the game is different today, because a massive part of the top team's tactics and also the other, it's like the first 10 minutes is what we do for the first 10 minutes, isn't it? You know what I mean? We get ourselves set in where we want to be. So it's not a case of where the last thing they would shout at us in the dressing room is, win your tackles, where, whatever. They don't do that anymore, do they? It's like, think about what our plan is. Let's get settled into the plan as quick as we can and play how we painted it all for you on the board. And that's where the game is different. And that's where maybe, I understand that there's people who follow football today and go, Roy Keane is old school. He is old school, but he still believes in those beliefs, And even when he was a manager, it's been a few years ago, when he was a manager, he still believed that you could survive on some good old-fashioned qualities, And I do believe you get a long way with that. Of course, you've got to have ability and everything else. You've got to be able to understand the tactic and whatever. But it's still a lot to do with effort, isn't it? Running an extra yard, still winning your challenges, picking up your second balls and whatever. All them things, picking up second balls, you don't know where the second balls are going to drop. So it's an effort to be there, isn't it? And be competitive. They are massive, I mean, you win 67% of your second balls, you got to win most football games.
Yeah, so you can still show aggression in maybe slightly different ways than the naked aggression it used to be. I want to circle back around to the two nominal title rivals. And I mean, other people may have a say in that. Chelsea may believe that they're in the picture as well. Who knows how the season's going to pan out between now and Christmas, and we'll see how the table starts to settle. But just a question about each of them in terms of Arteta. You kind of alluded to the fact that he does seem to set up in a risk-averse kind of way. And then they have to go for it at the end. And I thought it was notable to watch Declan Rice at the base of that midfield as they were like bombing on. And there's only so much you can do, I guess, when you've got two lines in front of you. But there was a limited range of passing from him. Maybe Odegaard's the missing link there. And maybe that's fair to say that. But again, it just doesn't seem to have that take a risk mentality, as this certainly from the start of matches anyway. So again, I'm just wondering, do you think that's going to be something that will limit him? You talked last week about, or a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about Scott Parker, and we talked about how, maybe just there's something in his makeup that limits him when it comes to Premier League level. Is there something that may limit Arteta there when it comes to actually winning one of the big pots, getting the league actually over the line, not being the nearly man? Do you think that might have something to do with it?
Yeah, I do, yeah. I mean, let's take nothing away from Arteta. From where he's took Arsenal to where they are today, and today they are competing. Today they're competing for the Premier League title. Last year, semi-final of the Champions League. So he's took them right to the top, and hats off. And yes, he's had a lot of money to spend, but nobody gets there without spending money. it's no good kidding yourself and going, whatever, money's important, wage, budgets and whatever, all these things are important. He's done a really, really good job. But I always feel that the biggest steps are the easiest steps to take, and the smaller steps are the hardest steps to take. And I'm just more and more thinking that I can't see him changing. He's manic about control. I mean, that was one of the first things he said after the game against Manchester City. He's talking about control, dominating, or whatever. It's like, what is control? What is dominating? And I think he gets that slightly wrong in that, yes, he comes in and you look at, I'm not sure how he ended up in NBA, but about 68% possession possibly for Arsenal. That's how it looked to me. And then all the negative stats about Manchester City, how few passes they attempted, how little possession they had, and all that stuff. But I still think that a lot of that City allowed Arsenal. Very unusual, but City went, yeah, you can have the ball. We'll set up here, set up for long periods in a 4-3-3, and then later on they went to 5-4-1, and they've just gone, you can have the ball. You can, and then after the game you can talk about all the stats in the world that you had the possession and whatever, but the things that matter. And then bizarrely enough, when City went to have 5-man defence, they then decided for the first time in the match to play a high line, which was madness. All game they defended the 18-yard line, and all of a sudden they scrolls up. And the only time when Arsenal had somebody on the pitch who was prepared to run behind in Martinelli, it just didn't make any sense. I mean, but again, there will be somebody telling me why they decided to push up at that moment. That one moment where SA in midfield had all the time in the world because nobody closed them down. And that's the beauty of football, isn't it? Sometimes it just doesn't make any sense. So, as much as I said 2 minutes before the end of that game, Liverpool would be delighted with the result. Manchester City winning 1-0. Equally, when Arsenal equalised, I think Liverpool will still be delighted. You keep both at more than arm's length. So it was in many ways a perfect afternoon, a perfect weekend. Because Spurs also, not Spurs. What we need, it's only 5 games played, so we're learning, aren't we? And we're thinking who could be the contenders. Spurs have made a good start, but I think I've seen enough of Spurs now to think, 6, 7, 8, when if they can get themselves into top 7, 8, I think they've done well. And then you mentioned Chelsea before. When I was at the game on Saturday, Manchester United against Chelsea, and again, looking at them, they've got a lot of ability. I just don't think they've got enough good players. And again, they've got a lot of players. But I just don't think they've got enough, and I don't think they've got enough away from home. I think they're a bit young, they're a bit naive, lack a bit of physicality. And I made my mind up about Manchester City. So, as I said before, Liverpool and Arsenal will finish first and second.
One of the pundits I was referring to earlier on, who likes to drop an occasional clanger that gets everybody talking, is Jamie Carragher, and he mentioned Arsenal having the best squad in the league, which led to tremendous amounts of debate. And I thought, and I was thinking about it, and there's probably an argument to be made if you go player by player through it. But I recall a time, Jan, in the not too distant past where I think we had the best squad, but Man City won the title. It doesn't necessarily have to equate one to the other. But we might delve into that topic again at some other time when we've got a bit more showtime to analyse it. Just to finish then, I wanted to have a word about City as well. There is a notable change in the way they're operating. You've alluded to it there. And it's hard to look away from the fact that we've got Pep in there helping. And there's a lot of talk about him. There's been a lot of talk about him. I'm not sure where that's coming from necessarily, if it's PR from within the club or like if he's got a particularly good agent, but it's very positive stuff, I have to say. And I think if you're a Liverpool fan, you might have a slightly different take on that because, there was some critique of how perhaps his influence wasn't necessarily the best for us and for our team in those last years with Klopp. Do you think he is having an impact there? Do you think Guardiola is the kind of manager who would allow himself to be impacted by anyone?
I think it's a really, really difficult question, Trevor. We heard Pep Guardiola last season talk about the way that football was evolving. And it was evolving without his fingerprints all over it. when football has been evolving previously in the last 20 years, he's been ahead of that, hasn't it? Because it's been him evolving football, hasn't it? And he was talking about the way that the game was being played. There were so many different ways of playing the game these days. And he said, I might have to change something. Hence the reason that he brought in Reinders. The thing with Manchester City is that, so you've got the director of football and the board or whatever, you never see any of them. I never see anyone speak to them. You never see the press officer, so you can never speak to him. And I've never heard anyone talk about, having a casual chat to Pep Guardiola, and I can tell you, I speak to people who had a little chat with Arne off the record. I myself, am on a touchline, I speak to managers that I know off the record. You get little bits and bobs. So I don't know where it's coming from at Manchester City, whether somebody have decided to take a bit of a gamble and think, we got a big personality in here now at Manchester City, who even in the company of Jurgen Klopp, wanted to sort of force his ideas onto the team. So maybe somebody just guessed and gone. And also, somebody was trying to tell me that the third goal against Manchester United when Erling Haaland ran through from the halfway line, that was kind of a counter-attack in the name of Jurgen Klopp. Pep Liners in it, but I just thought it was a bad pass from Harry Maguire. And so, it's like people are desperate to make that connection now, aren't they? They're desperate to make that connection with Pep Liners and the way that they're playing, and this is more like Klopp. I don't know. I would be amazed, though, if, and of course it won't be needed in all games, but I'd be quite amazed if Pep is prepared to play that way in the big games. And we know what the big games are. It's Liverpool, it's Arsenal, isn't it? Possibly Spurs, possibly Chelsea, and whatever. If he's prepared to play in that way in the big games, I'd be most amazed.
Yeah.